Alright, this is a 2001 Honda Accord V6, and I'm going to show you how to rebuild the rear disc brake calipers. The first thing is taking off the wheel. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you. First thing to do is loosen up each of these lug nuts when the car is still on the ground. And the jack point is on the tow hook in the back. You might need an extension or a block of wood. Once you've got the car off the ground, put your jack stand on the pinch weld indicated by the arrow, and then lift or set it back down on the jack stand, take off the wheel, and you should see your caliper. Make sure before you get started that your brake master cylinder is topped off. And the next thing that you have to do is make sure that you prop your brake pedal. All you have to do is jam the seat into the brake pedal to make sure that the ports on the master cylinder are closed. It makes it so that it doesn't keep leaking after you take off the brake hose. It doesn't have to be that tight, just firm. If you do accidentally get the master cylinder dry, what you have to do is loosen those two connections on the master cylinder and then bleed out the air that way. Got to mention, even though you use jack stands, I still keep the jack on the rear tow hook just in case the jack stand fails. Buy the Honda Caliper rebuild kit. There's a kit for the front and the back. Okay, so the rear ones have a smaller piston, so that's why the dust boot and the main seal are smaller. It comes with this grease, which is for the sliding pins. This is rubber grease, and this is, I believe it's silicone. I'm not sure. It also comes with washers and dust boot and the seals for inside the caliper. Okay, first thing to do is take off the brake hose, and it's a 14mm. This is the banjo bolt. There's washers on both sides of this. So one is still stuck on here, and the other one is stuck on here. So make sure you get both of them when you remove this. There's one. And there's a second one. Okay. We pushed in the brake pedal, and that stops the fluid from coming out. You can actually keep it like that overnight, and only a few drops will come out of here. But another thing that you can do is go to the hardware store and buy this. I think this is a 5/8 inch bolt. Get the bolt, 2 washers, and the nut, and you're going to plug up the brake hose with this. And you'll also need a thick sandwich bag or some kind of thick plastic. You puncture a hole in here and put the bolt through. This is going to act as our washer. If you can find rubber washers, that's even better. So let's see. Okay, so the sandwich bag goes in between, and then the washer and the nut. The next thing to do is put a wrench here where the head of the bolt is, and another wrench on the bottom, and then you're going to tighten it. Once you've gotten it tightened, even if the brake pedal slips, this should stop it from leaking. Okay, this is a tool that you'll need to make. It's a tire valve stem. What you do is you're going to cut off this top part so it looks like this. It's just the shaft. And then put the cap back on it, and then screw it into the hole that you took out the banjo bolt. Get pliers to torque this down. Right now it's going to prevent dust and dirt from getting into it, but later we're going to use this and a air pump to push out the piston. Okay, the caliper bolts on the back are actually 12mm. For the fronts, they're 14mm. When you put them back, make sure you use anti-seize. The reason why the rear disc brake calipers are more complicated than the front is because it's connected by the parking brake. So this is the linkage right here, and this is where it connects to the caliper. What we need to do first is loosen and remove this nut so that we can remove this. Okay, so the bolt for the parking brake mechanism is a 14mm. Once you've got the bolt most of the way out, this bracket will come out a little bit. Once the bolt's all the way out, you can now slip this off. And that's the cable for the parking brake to the caliper. Okay, once you got the bracket and the cable set aside, you can remove the caliper. Be careful, these brake pads will fall off, so hold them in place. Alright, there it is. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to replace the rubber boots here and here. You just pull it out. Pull this off. Do them one at a time because the top one is smooth and the bottom one I think is gold and it has flat areas on it. So this one's a smooth one. Clean off with a paper towel and take this off. If you notice, the part that goes in is thicker. Okay, from the rebuild kit, this is what you're supposed to use for the sliding pins, but I actually like to use this. This is Permatex Ultra Disc Brake Caliper, and it's silicone. The ones that they have now, I've seen it's silicone ceramic, and I don't know what the difference is. And I've seen silicone paste. I've seen other people use the silicone paste and they say it's fine, but if you can find this, which I don't see on Amazon anymore, this is the stuff I use and it's pretty good. After a few months, I've actually taken out the pins and the lubricant, it looks brand new still, and that's what it looks like. First thing we need to do is put one of these new boots back in, and if you can see, this part's thick and this one's not. So this thick part goes in first in there. Okay, next is putting the pin back in. Okay, if you notice, air is coming into this. So what you have to actually do is push out the air while you slide the pin back in. Okay, now you have to do the same thing for the bottom pin. So you notice the bottom one's gold and it's got flat spots on it. And there's the thick part. Just remember, when you put the piston back in, the plus has to go up and down and left and right, because the groove on the piston sits right on here, so this goes into the groove. So if you don't line that up correctly, then it won't sit on the piston correctly. A couple of things I forgot to mention is, after you take the brake hose off, you need to go back to the master cylinder and top off the fluid. You don't want that to run dry. Also, on mine, I used a ratchet and a 10mm bit to tighten the bleeder screw. I shouldn't have done that because now it's really tight. So I'm going to need to use my ratchet and break this break bleeder screw. Or not break it, but loosen it. Next time, you really just need an open-ended wrench to tighten it, because it doesn't need to be tightened that much. It blocks off the fluid pretty good. Okay, this screw is still pretty good. If it was rusted here and it was blocking the hose, you would need to replace this. All I see here is a little bit of rust here, and all you need is a metal brush. When you put the screw back on, you should put brake fluid here. Okay, you can use the Honda fluid, or you can use this Preston .3 brake fluid. I've got good recommendations for this one. Sometimes if you use .4 or you use a low quality .3, the temperature ranges aren't sufficient. I don't know how to explain it, but basically just look at the reviews and see which are the best recommended ones. So just coat the bleeder screw and then put it back. Okay, next thing we have to do is unscrew this piston. That's the difference between the front calipers and the back. The back ones you have to unscrew. You can use a tool like this, or you can actually just use a screwdriver and twist it off. Okay, right there it doesn't want to twist anymore because it's actually stuck on the back of here, so we have to use the screwdriver for the rest of the way. Okay, that's the dust boot here. And there's a piston. Okay, for the piston, all you need to clean it is a paper towel and brake fluid. That's it. You'll see rust here, but it's outside of the dust boot, so this piston is actually still pretty good. Here you'll see a circlip. You don't need to rebuild this part because behind the circlip is just a washer and a large metal spring. And this is the female threaded part, because on the caliper there's the male threaded part and they screwed together. That's why we had to unscrew it. If you do need to take this apart for whatever reason, you'll take the circlip off, and to get that circlip back in, just put it on here and use a 17mm socket and a hand clamp. So put this on here with the socket in here. Don't push onto this center part, the female threaded part. Don't push on that because that doesn't push down. But with that 17mm socket, it'll push down on the circlip and you'll hear it snap into place. But like I said, you won't need to rebuild that part. If this piston is pitted or rusted here, you'll just have to replace the piston, or actually you'll probably just have to buy a rebuilt caliper. This whole rebuild I'm showing you assumes that everything's good other than the seals, and yep, that's it. It helps if you have a nylon bristle to get into the recesses like here. This dust seal, taking out's easy, but when you put it back, that's one of the two hardest things to do on the rebuild for the rear. See, take it off, it's pretty easy. Yeah, I just realized this tire valve stem trick, Actually, it's not for the rear disc caliper. It's for the front. For the front, it doesn't screw off. So you would put an air pump here for the front, and it would blow out the piston. So, my bad. Okay, the next thing that we have to do is take out the main seal. Okay, the main seal, this is the most important part of the whole caliper for the rebuild process. It's a square seal, and this is what the piston rides on. So if you've got a leaking caliper, it's probably this thing. Okay, the next part is the second, or actually the most hardest part in the whole rebuild of the rear brake calipers. In there, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a circlip, and it's really hard to get to. It's hard to take it out if you don't have the right tool, and it's really, really hard to put it back in. So that, I don't know if you can see it, but that thing around the edge, that's the circlip. I tried to make a tool to get into there by filing this down, but even this isn't small enough because the handles actually get in the way. It's not good enough. There's a really popular tool on Amazon that you can get. I forgot what brand it was, but I got the other one. This one's OTC brand. It was $30, and these are called I think deep reach circlip pliers. Okay, once you get it into the two holes, you just squeeze and it should come out. Yeah, even with the right tool, it's really hard to get this out. But that's it. When you put it back, make sure you do it without the internal parts, so you can see exactly how this looks like in there and how deep it's supposed to be. Because when you put this back in, it'll look like it's in, but it's not deep enough. So that's gonna be a huge problem. Just check everything 10 or 12 times. Okay, next thing is all you have to do is pull this out. And try to keep everything together. Okay, so this is the retainer for the spring, and I haven't tried, but I mean they're together, so you don't have to break them apart. But after that, you can see there's a washer, and there's a bearing, ball bearing, and that smooth part contacts this. So this threaded part screws in with the female threaded part on the piston. and that's why you had to use a screwdriver to take it off. Okay, next thing, there's that part that we have to take off, and behind it is a metal pill. It looks like a medicine pill. So to take that off, the best way to do it is to tap it. If that doesn't work, use a 2x4. The thing that's holding it in there is grease. I couldn't get that out, so I'm gonna see if this will help. We have to do this anyways. Take this spring off. This is what was attaching the parking brake to this. It's not that hard, it's just had some trouble with it. So that hooks onto there, and this hooks onto that. And this is when you pull the handbrake, this is what engages the brakes. I don't know if that helped loosen that part in there, but I'm gonna try to tap it out again. Alright, that might have worked, I don't know, but if you can see, I got those two parts out, which is this, and it's got these two pins, which see that hole right there, and that hole, it goes into there. And there's also a metal pill. See if we clean the grease off. It looks just like a medicine pill. And so that pill goes into here, and then it goes back just like that. And so when you pull on that parking brake, it does something like this. I don't really know. Okay. The reason why we took these apart is right there is a round O-ring. You'll need to replace that. And on this part, I don't know if you can see it, but that's a square O-ring. It does have one way that it's supposed to go into. Okay, so this is one O-ring here. And it's just a round O-ring. I'm not sure what grease we're supposed to use, but that's the factory grease. I think it might be lithium grease. And here's the square O-ring. If you can see, this side's smooth, and this has got a groove, a cut into it, and so that cut faces this way. So the smooth side's on this side, and the groove side is on this side. So just make sure you do it like that when you put it back on. Okay, this is the new part. Okay, next thing that we need to do is take this off. Okay, this is where the pill went into, and it just lets it go up and down, I think. So that, even though it's really dirty, is the dust boot. And inside are needle bearings. But what's weird about these is there's actually a gap. See, there's a hole, and the needle bearings, they start from here, and they stop right there. So they actually slide around, and there's a gap, and that hole goes right through there. Okay, if you know what grease to use, you're going to want to grease up these needle bearings. But from the rebuild kit, it comes with a dust boot. So we're going to put this back on. And then, okay, I'm not sure if this is the right grease, but it's multi-purpose grease. It says disc brake wheel bearings, so maybe that's right. It says 0 to 375 Fahrenheit, NLGI number 2, grade lithium complex EP grease. hopefully this is right stuff, but I'm gonna put the grease around here and some in the bearings. So this grease has red dye, that's why it looks like that. Probably should have done this with the dust boot off. Yeah, like you just have to make sure that the bearings, the gap is lined up with the hole. Since I know that the pill goes in there, I know it should be pointed out here towards the piston. Okay. Okay, we're gonna put the spring back on. So this hooks onto that fake screw there. Not too bad. To put this back, just put the pill back on, and these pins are gonna line up with those holes in there. No way to really show it, but that's how deep it needs to go in. You'll know it's in because it'll lock in place, and pull on this to help to make sure it's seated in there right. And next thing you have to do is reinstall this. Just remember, goes in like this. This black part is a spacer, and that's the bearing right there, with the smooth side on this side. Okay, now this is the hardest part. Getting this in there. Before we do that, we need to put the main seal back on. So take this back out. Oops. I don't know if you can see, but the pill is still in there. Okay, use the rubber grease and grease this up. And it goes into the one that's on the inside. Okay, now we can put this back in. It should snap into those pinholes. Get the circlip back in. This is the hardest part out of this whole thing. What you have to do is squeeze and push it down on this side while you take a screwdriver on the other side and push the other side of the circlip down. Need a fairly thin one to fit it down there. This should be a two-person job, but if you're trying to do it yourself, what I did was one hand I push this side in, and with the other hand I squeeze the circlip here, and actually I use my foot to push down on the pliers here. It's really hard. I'm not gonna be able to get this on camera. It's that hard. But One thing that you should do is take all these out and put this circlip in just by itself, just so you can see how far down it needs to be. Because when it's down there right, these holes barely show. So if it's in there wrong, you'll see. If it's in there wrong, you'll see this whole part. But when it's in there right, the wall, the recess inside there, it actually covers this just a little bit, so you can just barely see the hole, and that's how you know it's in there right. But like I said, try it with just this circlip in there so you know how far you need to go in. You can see that the edge, the wall is touching the holes on that circlip. So again, how I did it was screwdriver on this part at an angle. So, because you have to maintain contact with the circlip, so you gotta do it at an angle with one hand, and the other hand you've gotta squeeze the circlip together and push it down. You can try pushing the screwdriver down with your chest, and on here I was able to do it with just my hand without my foot, but you can use your knee or your foot any way that you can to get both sides down. It takes about medium amount of pressure. Okay, next thing is use the rubber grease and try to lube up the wall. Alright, the next thing is lube up the piston. I've got a second packet of this stuff, so I'm not worried about how much I use, but you will probably have to use this sparingly. And then probably put some in this recess. Okay, before you put the piston back in, you'll have to put the dust seal back in. So that edge right there, that needs to go into the recess. There's two of them. One is for the main seal, which we already put in, and then the one in front of it, which that lip goes into. And this front part is what contacts the piston. So before you put this in, you have to lube it up. If you don't have rubber grease, you can just use brake fluid. The rubber grease helps on the dust seal because it doesn't touch the brake fluid, because the brake fluid is behind the main seal, and then after that is just the open air. So since this grease is thicker, it'll help seal that, and it'll keep the dust out better. Okay, we're gonna grease the part that touches the piston. And then we're gonna, this part's kind of tricky. You have to push it together and force it in here, and then when you're done, push it down all the way around and make sure that it's in there. This part's a little bit hard. And while you're doing this, make sure you look inside here, make sure it's in the right groove. Okay, make sure you look in there all the way around. Let's see. Make sure you check in there and look all the way around to make sure that it's in there. And then push it down. Once you think you've got it in, see, there's the main seal, and there's where the dust boot's supposed to go into. Make sure you check all the way around and look. Make sure it's in there. Okay, this is the second hardest part. If you made it this far, what you have to do is, well, for the front calipers, the piston's bigger, so what you can do is you can get the plastic cap from a paint can and cut it off and then make a slit in it. So what you have is a C, and you would slide it into the dust boot and then expand it so that you can fit the piston into the cap, and then you would slide the cap off. So there's a slit in the cap so that you can expand it and contract it. Since the rear disc caliper is a smaller piston, you have to get something smaller, I think. Maybe you could use a regular paint cap, but I'm not sure. You'd have to try it. The way I'm going to show you and the way that works for me is you're going to get the top part of the dust boot on here, and you're going to hold it with your thumb with this hand, and with the other hand you're going to basically you're going to squeeze it, and you can spread it around all the way to the bottom, and it'll snap in place. It'll just snap on. So you can put pressure and slide it around. It's hard because it takes quite a bit of finger strength, and it takes a lot of patience. So I'll try to get on camera, but I'm not making any promises. All right. So you have to get this top part on first. Almost got it. Okay. I think the trick is with this finger, apply upward pressure while you put downward pressure and slide it around here. So I guess that's the trick. Once you do that, we should just we just need to get the caliper back in. I mean, the piston back in. Okay. Once you've got it seated around the screw, we can begin spinning this back on. Okay, try to hold this seal out while you push it in, because this lip needs to snap onto this groove. Huh. I can chip off the rust. Okay, I don't know if you saw that, but the seal, the lip, snapped into the groove. So all you have to do now is screw it the rest of the way in. Okay, like I said, the only thing that you have to do is make sure that the plus is going sideways and up and down, because it's the pin on the inside brake pad has to go into the groove. So not this pin, but this top pin. When it sits in there, see, it goes right into that groove of the piston. Actually it's upside down. I think it's this way. So pin right there. Okay, and that's it. That's fully rebuilt. Okay, we're gonna reinstall everything. Okay, the caliper bolts, which already have anti-seize on them. Okay, if you notice that this nut behind it spins, so you have to put a wrench on that. Okay, before I tighten that one, I want to get the bottom one first. Yeah, that nut doesn't spin for whatever reason. Yeah, after a certain point you don't have to put a wrench on here. I don't use a torque wrench, but if you want to, you can use one and figure out what the correct torque rating is. I like to do it by hand, because that way, I mean, after you've done 12 millimeters and 10 millimeters and 14 millimeters, you get a feel of how tight it needs to be. And then a way to test it is you don't use your full strength. You just slowly and just give it pressure. I'm not showing it the right way on the video, but after you get a feel of each size bolt, and you can kind of do this, and if it starts spinning a little bit, you just keep doing it until it stops. But you don't want to go full strength, because if you don't know how it's supposed to feel, then you will strip out the bolts. Once you get those bolts tightened up right, the next thing that I would do is the brake hose, because this is open, so dust can get in. So I'd rather do that first before I tackle the parking brake connection here. So get a wrench there and your ratchet at the top. Okay, you'll notice that no fluid actually came out, or not much. That's why we had the brake pedal pushed in. It does a really good job. But that bolt is just a safety precaution. Alright, the rebuild kit actually comes with washers. So and then off camera, you didn't see me, but I did clean up these surfaces with a paper towel. And right here is actually kind of like it's like a groove that the hose actually fits into. And I'll finish tightening that later, because I want to get the parking brake back on. Okay, so this part of the bracket, it has two holes. This hole right here is for the bolt, and this round smooth hole is so this pin can go into. So that's the cable for the parking brake, and then put the pin into the smooth hole. and then you're gonna put the bolt in. This bolt didn't seem like it was rusted, so I'm not gonna put any C's on it, but you can if you want. Actually, you have to take it off, take the bracket off because the fit's pretty tight. So put the bolt in first. Okay, once you've got the bolt most of the way in, you just need to tighten it. The parking brake's back in, and we just need to finish tightening this. What you're actually doing is you're crushing those two aluminum washers, so you gotta be careful. You don't want to overdo it. And I'm not using all of my strength. Okay, the last thing that we need to do before we finish this is top off the master cylinder, and then this bleeder screw is open, and I've elevated the hose to help it not get air bubbles. So all we have to do now is push on the brake pedal, and we've got the wooden board pushed against the brake pedal, so you have to take that out first. Once the fluid comes out clear, and you keep watching the master cylinder, make sure it's not empty. Once this fluid is clear, it's done, and then just close the bleeder valve, and then put your wheel back on, and that's it.